Hello and welcome to another episode of Right Makes Might. I am Dr. Duke. We're going to talk today about Orlando. In fact, Orlando is such a rich, the shooting at the nightclub in Orlando is such a rich territory to explore completely how this country has gone off the rails, how our federal government is unwilling to call Islamic terrorism what it is, but is more than happy to stereotype and scapegoat Christians, Christianity, conservatives, gun owners, Second Amendment people, constitutionalists. All those have been listed as responsible for the shooting of a gay nightclub in Orlando, Florida. In reality, we know, those of us who are saying no, that which cannot be spoken, we must speak, that this is yet another instance of radical Islamic terrorism. Go all the way back to 2015 with me. You may remember the shooting of a Charleston church by a goofy young white boy by the name of Dylann Roof. You may remember that when Dylann Roof killed 9 people and injured 1 at a Charleston church, the immediate response was swift. The fact that Roof had taken pictures of himself draped in a Confederate flag absolutely suggested that this was white racism, that this was Klansmanship, this was the Ku Klux Klan. Immediately and all throughout the Dylann Roof saga, this was linked to white privilege, white violence, racism. Across the board, the Dylann Roof story, we identified how Christianity, Southern Christianity, racism played a huge role in that shooting. The President of the United States on down to local news media all highlighted that aspect of the case, who Dylann Roof was and what allegedly his background and his implications were. If we simply move back a little bit further to 2009 then, and remember the story of Major NIDAL HASAN, who shot up a Fort Hood military base. Now, Mr. HASAN, a major in the American Army, had all sorts of complaints filed against him. He had been linked to all sorts of jihadi terrorist groups. The FBI ignored numerous warnings about his increasingly militant Islamic stand, an American major. And when he killed 13 and wounded another 30 by shooting up Fort Hood, the Obama administration simply called it workplace violence. There was no suggestion whatsoever that Islamic terrorism had a role to play in this, that HASAN represented an ideology that was itself hell-bent on destroying the American military and undermining American civilization. And then we move to 2013, where the TSARNAEV brothers, Tamerlan and Dzhokhar, bombed the Boston Marathon, killing 3 and wounding 264 Americans. The Obama administration did incredible contortions to deny that Islamic terrorism was the real problem here, or that these boys had been radicalized in American society, which they had. As a matter of fact, the bombs were pressure cookers, you may recall, and I did not see any move to ban pressure cookers used as a lethal weapon in the same way that they're turning what happened in Orlando into a commentary on guns. But the TSARNAEV brothers, particularly Tamerlan, had been interviewed by the FBI. Your federal government, in the case of the Major HASAN incident, in the case of the TSARNAEV brothers, the FBI was completely aware of what was going on, what was happening, met numerous reports. Jump ahead to 2014. You may remember the case of ALTON NOLEN, otherwise known as Jakim Israel, the employee of a Moore, Oklahoma factory who sawed off the head of one American woman and stabbed another one, all the while shouting epithets praising Allah and condemning America. Obama simply responded to that one by sending a federal government representative to the mosque where Israel was trained to praise the mosque for its efforts to clean up Moore, Oklahoma after the tornadoes. No mention from the president of the mosque's role potentially in training the radicalized ALTON NOLEN. And then, of course, we have 2015, the San Bernardino shooters, Syed FAROOK and Tashfeen Malik, one a naturalized American citizen given permanent legal status, the other a born and bred American. These 2 radicalized Muslims shot up an entire building, wreaked havoc, 14 dead, 22 wounded. And this was Obama had very little to say about this except to blame guns. This is the same year, 2015, you may remember, that Obama at a prayer breakfast told Christians that they need to get off their high horses because of, yes, you guessed it, the Crusades. So because 1,000 years ago, Christians were engaged in a defensive and a retaliatory war, a war they didn't start, against radical Islam who had conquered the Middle East. Because of that 1,000 years ago, we need to just shut our mouths about radical Islam and running loose in American streets today. And so what does all of this tell us? It tells us that the American federal government understood the threat of many of these men, had reports on many of these men, conducted FBI interviews with many of these killers. And in the wake of all those murders, you're being lectured, America, that our Christian heritage is to blame, that our rights to own guns are to blame, that everyone's homophobia is to blame for all of this. White privilege is responsible for all of this. Everything but what it is. So you have a federal government that is aiding and abetting this kind of garbage by creating a climate where people are afraid to come forth and report what happens. Your federal government has set this up, has refused to investigate thoroughly, and when they do investigate, they refuse to act. And then when blood is on the streets and the floors of our discotheques and our street corners, when that happens, it's your fault for doing it. And do you wonder now why the Founding Fathers put the Second Amendment in place?
This is Right Makes Might with Dr. Duke.